So we should be live. Evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. As you see tonight, we've got David Clews of UNN with us. Very grateful to have his time here tonight. He's a busy man. He streams every night on his channel. We're going to be talking about a variety of things, his background and how he became an online activist, the murder on Monday. It feels like a lifetime ago now, especially with events last night, the tragic murder of Wayne Broadhurst in Uxbridge. It wasn't on the agenda, David, and we've not spoken about it before, but of course we'll talk about last night. David's views on infiltrating reform. I've seen one or two clips online of David's views about how people can keep their head below water and infiltrate reform. So we'll talk about that. And also the final topic of the night will be the Israel-Palestine conflict. We're going to go for about 50 minutes because David has to shoot off. David, if I do forget at around 6:50, do interrupt and stop me. And yeah, very grateful for your time. So if you can just give yourself a quick intro, that'd be great.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. My name's David Clews. I'm the lead correspondent at UNN, which I was founded along with my ex-colleague Carol Pearson in April 2018. No, 2017. Do you know something? I can't even remember. I think it was 2018 because this will be 6 years. And I've been doing UNN now for 6 years. Prior to that, I've always been exceptionally political my whole life. I was very political when I was young. I remember in, it was lower four, but it would be primary four. That would have been what year? That would have been 1990. No, it wouldn't have been. Would that have been, 92?
You know better than me,
election. But before your time. What year were you born, Dan?
95.
95. So I was doing... I think I stood for the Tories at school then, so I was always very political. I would always say I've been reasonably right-wing, socially conservative, but like anything with politics, there's been evolving. I think where I am now, aged 43, I think I'm reasonably settled on my views, because again, people have political journeys. They aren't born. Like, it's not like June, you're not pre-born. You do learn as you go along. And I mean, I think that, that's probably one of the reasons why it's not good to have people, because I was actually an elected councillor when I was 24. And I mean, you're too young at that point. I think there's too many young people in politics. And I think, when you are in important positions like that, you need to have a bit of life experience. So yeah, here I am now, and we stream 5 nights a week, and we're on X, Telegram, and just trying to put the world to rights.
So you mentioned the Tories there. So did you start off within the Conservative Party?
Yeah. Let me try and think back. I mean, look, see, when I was a teenager, I was pretty right-wing. Let's just put it that way. I kind of knew the score, but I thought, well, there's no point in joining like the BNP. The BNP were the big party at the time, but I was like, well, they're not going to achieve anything. So I thought, well, I'll join the Tories. And because I'm not a free market capitalist, but I do always believe you have to have some form of entrepreneurial spirit and hard work. I'm not a die-in-the-wool Thatcherite or anything like that. But yeah, I was in the Tories, and I was in the Tory Students Association when I was at university, and then I started campaigning. That would have been, 2005? Probably I started getting a bit more active involved, and then elected in 2007. But in 2010, I fell out with the Tory party and I joined the Labour Party. And I think that's where my politics has changed in that over the years. They say people become more right-wing, but on economic issues, I think I've become a lot more, I hate using these terms, but I think I've become a lot more aware of the structural, I know this sounds very leftist, the structural inequalities that do exist in society from a financial perspective, especially for young people. It's just horrific out there. The price of houses, the price of everything, the price of cars, and young people get an absolutely horrific deal. The free market is not going to give them the answers to that. There's clearly got to be some form of government help and overall help to help people, and people who do fall on hard times. I think we have a role to help these people.
So how long were you in the Labour Party for? I must be honest, I wasn't aware of that when I was looking
Yeah,
into it.
2000. Well, just if you Google it, David Clews Labour, in 2010, I fell out with him, and I was in there maybe for about 2 or 3 years, and I was on and off, active with them. And I always say this to people: when I was in the Labour Party, the average Labour member and politician did care more about everyday people than the Tories ever did. I mean, your average Tory member was fine, but Tory candidates, Tory MPs, Tory politicians, genuinely like horrific people. I mean, I'd say, go as far as to say they were scum. They were self-serving. They really only cared about themselves, about their own careers, and that was the thing that's why I left them, because I was just disgusted with their attitude. They didn't care about how to reach segments of the population that Labour could. Whereas I was like, but look, most of these people are socially conservative. They're maybe not economically conservative. We could read, oh no, blah blah blah. And they did just want to retire to the shires and wear tweed, and that is the average Tory. And as I say, I have a visceral hatred for the Tory party.
Sorry, do you mean they didn't want to attract the youth, or you say what?
Everyone. They didn't want to attract anyone. They were happy with like the Blue Rins Brigade supporting them. They had no interest in society. A lot of them, they couldn't understand why people didn't like them. You know, they didn't bother. And it's funny because, you know, the Tories thought the way to speak to these people was to go socially liberal. So you had Cameron, who then came in. I mean, I hated David Cameron. I hated George Osborne. And they thought, well, they will reach people by liberalising on social issues. And again, that's not really what most people want. And it's this worst of all worlds you get with the mainstream political parties.
I suppose you're alluding to gay marriage there, possibly. Another.
Yeah, I was. I remember at the time when Cameron brought that in, and that was against the wishes even of the average Tory member. And it was just one of these ones. It's like who? It's such a niche thing, and it achieved nothing. And again, being up in Scotland politics was also very skewed by the constitutional question of independence. But I mean, I think as well, the world of the early 2010s is a completely different world from where we are now in 2025. The world has just changed so much. Just even in 5 years, the world's changed so much. I like people underestimate exactly what's happened in the last 5 years. You've had COVID, you had the Ukraine war, you had October the 7th, and then you've had, 5 million new people brought into this country. The Boris wave, which it just, you look at the graphics and you see it. I mean, like again with the immigration debate, there was a simplicity, not a simplicity, but there was almost a go. I'm trying to think of the right word here. There was, Morgoth talks about this on X. There was like the polite lie, like you had friends or people who were from foreign backgrounds, but you wouldn't kind of see it. Whereas what's happened in the last 5-6 years, like everywhere you go in this country, it's like a foreign country now. You can't deny your eyes and ears.
Absolutely. And David, how did you become an online activist? So from leaving the Labour Party to now, what was the journey? How did this come about?
Again, it was one of these ones where with Brexit, I was a mild Brexiteer. I thought it was the right decision to leave the EU. But then the government kind of tried to overturn that, and the media was exceptionally biased. And it's funny because I kind of describe UNN when I launched it in 2018. We were a bit like what GB News is now. We were like waving the Union flag, patriotic news and unbiased. Whereas now I think we've kind of moved we've moved on from that. So that was because there was a big gap on the market back then. But as I said, there was an innocence almost to like myself and everyone that was involved, because we thought that, well, we voted to leave the EU. That's us. We're going to take back control. We're going to control our borders. We're going to be a sovereign nation once again. And look at what's happened. The complete opposite of what everyone voted for.
Yeah, we certainly didn't get what we voted for. I was young at the time, I was 21, but I did vote leave. And what we were expecting compared to what we've got is polar opposites, obviously.
Well, I actually think now, if I knew what I knew now, and it was the Brexit vote, I would probably have said don't. I'm not sure. I might have still voted to leave, but I would have been very sceptical about a lot of the figures involved in it. Sure. Because a lot of the people involved in it were, disaster capitalists. They were involved with international finance. Even Farage himself said, well, we'll stop bringing in European immigrants and we'll bring in people from the Commonwealth. And that, again, that's not what people voted for. People voted to leave the EU very simply was to shut the borders and to control immigration. That was the big reason.
Do you think it was a de facto immigration referendum?
It was. Yeah. It was 100%. It was. But again, if you were to say to people, well, what would you rather have? A few 100,000 people coming in from Eastern Europe or like 2 million people from India? There's just no comparison to what's been done to us over the last few years.
No, thank you. Moving on now to the next topic, which was the murder of Wayne Broadhurst. We have to say this for legal reasons. He's the alleged killer. We've all seen the footage. We have to say allegedly is someone called Safi Dawood, who came to the UK illegally back in 2020 and was granted asylum in 2022. I mean, where to start with this, David? I'm sure you've seen the footage as well. Absolutely tragic. Growing up, like I said, I was born in 95. These sort of events, I was very young when 7/7 happened, for example. I have vague recollections of it. But every day, every week, every month, these incidents just seem to happen time and time again. We'll move on to the topic last night in a minute, but where to even begin with something like this?
Yeah, I mean, what people don't realise about these countries. I mean, I've never been to Afghanistan, but I'm not stupid. I understand how these countries work. Life is very cheap. If you look at IQ statistics, intelligence levels in places like Afghanistan, what's the average IQ? 80, 90? I don't know if he's even as high as that.
Sure. Yeah, take the point.
You're dealing with people who don't want to engage in debate, dialogue, civility. It is, I'm going to murder you or you're going to murder me. And clearly not everybody that's come from Afghanistan is going to go out and stab someone. But on a per capita and statistical basis, if you import hundreds of thousands of Afghans from a war zone, you're going to get incidents like this. And the question is it worth it? Is it worth having 100, 200,000 Afghans in Britain? And well, I mean, again, there's just none of the people that push the open borders agenda can ever answer that. I mean, again, I heard an incredible statistic. Only 1 in 10 Somalians are in full-time employment. 1 in 10. So that's 9 out of 10 Somalians in Britain aren't in full-time employment. Therefore, what exactly is it that they're bringing to the country? And as I say, you can be opposed to mass immigration on all just pure evidence-based. Like, what is it these people bring? And the thing about the Wayne Broadhurst murder was they didn't even talk about it. There was nothing. Starmer's never mentioned it. None of the mainstream reform have mentioned it. But they've memory hold it. And at the end of the day, that's a guy out walking a dog who's been murdered by someone who quite simply should not have been here. And he's another victim sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism.
I think the sad reality is in 2 or 3 years, like you say, if you said that name to someone, they probably wouldn't know what you're referring to. That's the really tragic thing about all this. One or two comments just to respond to. Someone said the use of the term allegedly. I have to say that. We've all seen the footage, but I have to say that for legal reasons. But someone else has also said, why are they so keen, as in the press, to tell us that he was an Afghan who arrived illegally with indefinite leave to remain? Which I thought this earlier when I was reading the BBC News article, because some people online think that elements of the press are trying to cause civil strife and division, more division than there already is in the UK. I don't know if you have a view on that, David.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do, and it is real. I mean, I've talked about this extensively. There is a lobby that is pushing for a civil war narrative. But again, I think I've got a reasonably good weather vane about when these things happen. And as I said, when it happened, there wasn't a lot in the media about it. It wasn't broadcast wall to wall. So these things do happen. And I think the media and the government try and just cover it up. Now, clearly there will be events that happen and the media then won't shut up about it. Like, for example, the synagogue attack that took place. If you compare the response to that to Wayne Broadhurst and now this incident, you had a Cobra meeting, you had an SAS helicopter up in the air, you had police deployed at the weekend, you had Starmer fly home, you had every single political party issuing the same messages. So that, to me, is when the state apparatus gets involved in these things to push a very specific agenda.
And I guess to counter the point I just said, on the flip side of that, with the Manchester synagogue attack, I mean, the guy was a Syrian called Jihad. I can't remember his surname. And you had the press saying he was a Briton of Syrian descent. Of course, he wasn't of Syrian descent. He was a Syrian, born in Syria. I'm someone who's born in England of Irish descent. That is, that would be a fair narrative. But with him,
I mean, as I say, it's
incredible.
I think a lot of it is done to muddy the waters. As we'll go on and talk about, the latest attack, because as I say, I think, look, this is a tough one because I am known as a conspiracy theorist. I love rabbit holes in these things, but I think if the government was coordinating these attacks, they would do things that were a lot more like spectacular. If there was security services involvement, I just think there are these lone wolf attacks. If you've imported, as I said, millions of foreigners into this country, on a statistical level, you're going to have lone wolf lunatics who just go out and start stabbing people, and that's just what's going to be. There's going to be more and more of that. It's the same with all the rapes as well. The same with all the sexual assaults. You're just going to have more of it. The statistics don't lie.
And then if we move on to last night in Huntingdon, we've had reports of at least 10 people being stabbed. 2 are reportedly in life-threatening conditions. I've not seen footage anywhere of this at the moment. Obviously, it has happened, but I'm saying usually with these things, we do see stuff online. If we talk about the media's response, within, I think, 30, 40 minutes probably of the Liverpool incident a few months ago, you had the press reporting that it was a white British man within half an hour. And then last night, there was none of that. Sky News interviewed a man who did say it was one of the 2 people who've been arrested was a black man. So I guess my question to this is, with the Liverpool incident, is it because it was football fans? Is it because it was Scousers who aren't soft, to put it that way? Why have we got such a different response on these 2 incidents?
Again, this is where the situation is reasonably complicated, because there are a lot of people out there muddying the waters and have very specific agendas. Clearly, there is what I would call the counter-jihad movement, which is symbolized by people like Tommy Robinson, Liam Tufts, all these guys. And their main thrust of argument is that we're in an ideological battle. It is not a racial battle or an ethnic battle. It's an ideological one. And the problem is Islam. So, you had the driver attack, and people were, everyone online, was this a Muslim? And the same with last night, and they're like, well, is this a Muslim terror attack? And again, they're kind of muddying the waters, because again, what happens last night is you've got people, the government are saying, well, they're British born, but I mean, they're clearly not ethnically British. They're one was Caribbean, one was, obviously African. And somewhat, the Landour, who's a YouTuber, made a good point. He said that actually makes it even worse, because, well, if these people aren't doing it from an ideology, then why are they just randomly stabbing so many people? The story I've heard is that it's something to do with one of those county lines drug gangs. I don't know. That's just a story I've seen and heard. I just think it's very worrying, and more of these attacks will continue to happen. And the thing that no one would ever dare talk about is, was this an anti-white attack? Was this a racially motivated anti-white attack? Which, it could clearly have been. So everything's up in the air. People are worried. People are concerned. And I think people should really be concerned, because you don't know who these people are. You don't know their motivations. You don't know their backgrounds. And it's funny, because I see all these people on X oh, blah, blah, blah. You've got white people do things. Look, of course that happens. No one's denying it. But to exacerbate your problems with other groups of people. And the other thing is as well, if you look at the media does push this. I mean, it pushes an exceptionally anti-white agenda, and it also radicalizes, black people, telling them that they are discriminated against, telling them that they're racially abused, and they're constantly getting that pumped into them as well. So it's a very toxic mixture out there.
Do you believe the South? I don't really feel like we've ever been told the reason Southport happened. Do you believe that may have been an anti-white attack?
Yes. Why did he go there? He went in the taxi. Another story I heard at the time was that Rudy Cabana was actually sexually abused by people in the TV and theatre industry, because remember, he did that commercial for Doctor Who.
Sure, yeah.
So, again, this isn't apologizing for his behavior, but, he came from an African background, a Christian background, where clearly that type of behavior is taboo. So I think that's the story I heard, was that he was sexually abused. And who really knows? Like, they try to also say, again, this is where the water gets muddied. That he'd looked up Al-Qaeda training books and stuff like that. And I mean, he was just doing that because he was obviously cuckoo. I think a lot of people spend too much time focusing on why, etc., etc. We clearly have a problem here in this country, and there's going to be more and more of these lone wolf type incidents, just because of what they've done in the last 10 years, 20 years.
I've said to friends as well, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when this happens at a primary school or something similar of that nature again, which is a harrowing thought, but that's where we are, I guess.
Yeah, and the thing is, as I say, there's no people aren't really too sure of who the real enemy is. Like, as I said, you mentioned like a lot of it in the talk of civil war, etc.
You're gonna mute David.
Who would the civil war be between? Are you going to have white people fighting with Muslims, or are they going to fight alongside the Indians against them? Like, the whole place is just an absolute mess and a basket case. And I've actually coined the phrase and talked about this. It's not the Balkanization of Britain, it's the Lebanonization of Britain, where Britain will become this sectarian, conflict-riddled place. Like, and you have all these different groups, you have all these different territories, and shifting allegiances. And clearly no one ever wins. And then you just become like Lebanon, which is a failed state.
Yeah. Just before we move on, obviously anyone that, I'm not saying you obviously weren't doing this, anyone that does encourage or talks and promotes civil war and violence should just be shunned and ignored, because
I mean, I've been very outspoken on this, and I interviewed David Betts. I don't know if you saw the interview I did with him, and I said this. I said, look, who's fighting who here? What are they doing? Yeah. Like, it's not gonna achieve anything, and it's not gonna win.
Well, like, no one wins in those scenarios anyway.
No, they don't. But the problem is, you do have a lot of very angry people out there who want to express. And again, I understand that. But what is it? People don't understand how powerful the British security state is. Like, a lot of people got caught up last summer during the disorder, and for the first 2 or 3 days they did lose control, but very quickly they assumed control. You know, they've got the police stations, they've got the guns, they've got the handcuffs, they've got the military, they've got the weapons. I mean, what? And then people say, well, David beat Goliath. Well, as I say, it's nonsensical. The British security state is exceptionally powerful. It crushes people, and you'll just be an ant. And again, you will be a pawn in someone else's game, because there are a lot of people who are pushing that civil war narrative, who are doing it from a place of bad faith. They see an opportunity to, you know, come in and take over the UK or you know, slam it down to buy it up on the cheap.
And it shows as well how effective the British state can be when it wants to be. If you compare that to the small boats arrivals, for example, we'll just leave it at that. When they want to do something, they certainly can.
Well, correct. Like that's the other thing people keep going on about, and I see it all the time on like GB News is, the government are just so incompetent. No. Well, they're not when, as you say, when it suits them. Like when they need to be, they can be exceptionally competent. But they clearly choose, they allow these boats to land, and likewise they allow the planes to land and the trucks full to land.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, David. Just a quick comment, guys. If you're new to the channel and you're enjoying this, please do like and subscribe. Like I say, interesting interviews with interesting guests going forward. 2 words too similar there. Next topic, David, is I've seen clips of you, particularly with Alec Yober, in one of your discussions about the proposal of infiltrating reform, and I wanted to speak to you about that. So can you just lay out your stance for people?
Well, again, I've been kind of wargaming all the different scenarios, because I do think that we are reaching the end game in terms of the country, and I think we have about 5 to 10 years to turn this ship around. Now, as I said, you have a number of options. The first option is you engage in an armed struggle against the British state. And as I pointed out, I just think that would be ridiculous, because you'd be absolutely crushed. The second option is you'd try and effect change through the ballot box. And there is no other electoral vehicle available for people who have our views except the Reform Party. Now, you have an opportunity to join Reform, get involved and make an influence. Because the other thing that Reform have, which is their kryptonite, is the average member of Reform is far further to the right than the party itself is. Farage himself is just a boring centrist Tory Thatcherite, as is Richard Tice, as is Zia Youssef.
You think Farage is boring?
Yeah, I don't think he's. Really? I don't think he's inspiring. I think he is. He is not the man that he once was. I remember the Nigel Farage of the early 2010s, and the way he would stand up in Parliament, in the European Parliament. I mean, he would eviscerate them. Jean-Claude Juncker, Tony Blair. He called out George Soros. He would talk about how, NATO was a provocateur. I don't see that now. I see Farage as just Mr. GB News Tory now. I don't find him interesting.
I'm trying to think of a more charismatic politician in the UK, genuinely.
Well, there isn't. But this is my point. But this is also my point. This is why he is the only option available for people. If you want to try and destroy the two-party system, he's the best you're going to get. Now, I actually think what's happened is elements of the British establishment realise that the Tories and Labour are dead brands. So they need someone who's acceptable. And as I said, Farage isn't going to overly rock the boat. But what my argument was is, let's just say Reform do win the next general election and bring in, say, 350 MPs. From a statistical perspective, you might get at least, well, if you look at Reform, there's one or two out of 7 that are quite, outspoken.
Sure.
Out of 350, you could get 30 to 35 MPs who are outspoken, who do push the envelope and will really go hard on issues. And again, my other argument for getting involved in supporting Reform is Reform won't actually achieve anything. Reform will win, hopefully, the next election in 29. They will come in, they will try and do stuff. The civil service, the media, and the unions will block them. Then you'll be in a situation where the British public will be like, well, we've just been told we can make change by voting Reform, and now we can.
So what do you think happens at that point then? As in, what's I've got some questions about your strategy based on what you just said, but what do you think if that scenario you've just
proposed? That's when the fun starts. That's when I do think there could be serious societal upheaval. I think there will be serious economic issues by then. Clearly, the attacks or whatever happening will have ramped up by then. And I think that presents an opportunity. I think it presents an opportunity if Farage can't do it, then other people who have a stronger will or a tougher stomach may have to come in and sort these problems out.
And just going back to the strategy, which there are some pros to it, I guess some cons would be if you're standing on a platform and then getting elected and you've got the 350 MPs, and then to say I was elected an MP, for example, and I go and say, okay, I've said all this on the campaign trail, but now I want to do this. Will those MPs just not be shunned by Farage and the leadership? And look what's happened to Rupert Lowe.
Well, yeah, but again, look at the influence that he has, and you build up your own personal following. As I say, I just think by that point, by 2029, 2030, Britain will just be such a mess that there'll be a lot of people won't care. And yeah, fine, they might lose the whip, but Farage can't chuck you out of Parliament. You're an elected member. You're there for 5 years. So even if your Reform decide to throw you out, you can be an independent. You're in Parliament. The media can't ignore you. You'll have a social media account. They won't be able to ban the social media account.
Part of me also thinks, would Reform having a narrow victory at the next election actually be the worst thing doable? Because if that scenario happens and then you have, like you say, MPs like Rupert Lowe being kicked out, when 2034 comes around, will people just be done with the drama of the party? Whereas let's say Reform get 200 odd MPs and then in 2034 they ramp to victory because we've got another 5 years of Labour. Could that?
I think you'll find come the 2030s, the world will. If you look at the acceleration that we're in right now, if you look at what's happened over the last 5 years, I think by the early 2030s, the place will just be an absolute basket case, And as I say, that order out of chaos, it presents us with opportunities to actually do something radical and do something different, because I just see it getting worse and worse from here.
Were you surprised that Reform didn't win the recent by-election
in Caerphilly in Wales?
Yeah.
No, not really, because it's Wales. That's a running joke on UNN, my anti-Welsh slant. And I mean, there is a bit of truth to that. There is a not obviously not everyone in Wales, but there is a very strong anti-English sentiment that does exist in Wales, as it exists also in Scotland, and clearly Plaid Cymru played on that. So I don't think they're going to win everywhere, but I think they'll win in a lot of places. And again, just don't underestimate, the power of the media to still convince people that you better not vote for them or they'll call you a racist.
Do you think that still holds as much weight? I know it still holds
Yes.
some weight. Do you still think it's
Yeah, it does. It
people like
does. It does. It does. Because, it's fine for people like me who do this for a living and put my face and name out there. But if you're someone who has a mortgage, has a car, and 2 children, 3 children to feed, if you get called a racist, then, you're a goner. So, of course, it works. And it is a powerful tool to silence people, unfortunately, especially in normie land. Maybe not in our world, but in normie land, it still works.
Sure. So the final question probably on this one, David, is do you think Reform will win a majority?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll win a reasonably big majority. I think the Tories and Labour will just continue to be absolutely hated. And I think the reason I also point this out is all the people right now who are purists that say, I hate Reform, I hate Farage, I guarantee you, on the day they will go out, they will hold their nose, and they'll put an X next to Reform. Because they don't have any option to do anything else. And they know that that's actually a chance to destroy the two-party system. And that, as I said, is the best we're going to get as things currently stand. And I think they'll win, and I hope they do, because as I say, then people will be left with a choice of, well, my vote doesn't count either. So I think, as I said, there's a long-term strategy here that will see things continue to accelerate.
I take the point about people on X who are critical of Farage. I guess on the flip side of that, what I'd say is, do you think a lot of, because all the opinion polls are pointing to a big Reform victory, but do you think when it actually comes to election day, there'll be a lot of, especially boomers, who just bottle it and vote for the Tories?
No, I think they know that it's game over. They hate the Tories. I mean, they do. Like Rishi Sunak, no one voted for Rishi Sunak. Some people did, but no one would. Kemi Badenoch, people aren't going to vote for Kemi Badenoch. Let's be realistic. Who are Labour going to put up? By that time, it might be, I don't know if Starmer will last to 29. Who have they got?
David
So,
Lammy?
well, exactly. So
Yeah.
there is going to be a fact. Well, Nigel's the only white man on the ballot, and people will vote for him. I think they will. I have a bit of faith that it won't be like Canada or Germany where they default to the main parties. I think they realise that they are sick of it and they have to do something. So as I say, it will be a positive, but it's not anywhere near where we need to be.
Sure. Just coming up to the last 10 minutes, so we'll move on to the final topic of the night, and that's the Middle East conflict, Israel-Palestine. Obviously, we've had the supposed big peace deal. There have been skirmishes and violence on the border since then, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen Israel has done some sort of bombing since this so-called peace agreement.
A day ending with Y, so that's just the usual, isn't it?
So my question is, what do you see for the future of Gaza and the Middle East?
Well, I mean, I see the future for Gaza as the future for the rest of the world, really, where you are a kind of slave in your own country. And again, it's an interesting one because I see a lot of people, they're on two camps. It's, I hate the Palestinians, they're terrorists. Or it is, well, what's it got to do with me? And as I keep pointing out, it really has everything to do with us. And as I say, I support the Palestinian people trying to reclaim their country from foreign invaders, which is really what we're trying to do. And the whole Western world, especially American politics, is beholden to the Israel lobby. And we are also beholden to the World War II narrative as well. And unless we can all move on from that and start putting our own countries first, we'll still be in this situation. And I think with Israel, I mean, their behavior's just been ridiculous. You cannot do these things. You cannot bomb innocent women and children. You cannot deny aid. You cannot deny water to people. And they've alienated, huge amounts of the world. And again, this is what, a certain group of people always do throughout history. No state belonging to a certain group of people, I'll watch because they're on YouTube, has lasted longer than, I think it's 80, 85 years. So there we are. And as I say, what they've done in Gaza is just mental, and the same in the West Bank. And I don't understand why I do understand why we have so many people on the British right who think that it is sensible to ally yourselves with that group of people, because you never get anything in return from them.
So I'd say over most of the last my life, put in simple terms, I've always, in very simple terms, seen that the left support the Palestinians, the right support the Israelis. But I think the past 2 years, the right has now become very fractured, where probably in that last 2 years, more than in the last 20, support for Israel has just collapsed on the right. So why has it taken so long? Is it purely seeing the images on X and social media that we've not had access to before?
I think it's a number of things. I think, yes, that is that. But also people look at the state of their own countries now. They see what's happened to them. And then they look at NGOs based out of Israel who have facilitated mass immigration into the West. And again, it is the question, what do we get? What do we get in return for this support? Like, nothing. And I mean, in America, it's much further gone now. You see, like, the likes of Tucker Carlson, he's now interviewing Nick Fuentes. The America First agenda. America's way, way further ahead. I mean, look, America is totally controlled by the Israel lobby. We're controlled by the Israel lobby, but a different kind of Israel lobby. I know this is a bit complicated, but America's run by, like, Likud, Netanyahu, Ben Shapiro, far more right wing. We're run by, like, more left wing Israel support. I mean, it is they're the same thing. It's just two different shades. But again, I think people are looking at it. They're seeing, well, why? What do we gain from it? And the reality is nothing. As I say, absolutely nothing. And I think the game that these people play in trying to influence our politics is waning. And I mean, you saw it with the Tommy Robinson trip to Israel. The amount of people that were like, what's this all about? What's going on here? Why? It's like, say I went to Russia, right? Say I went to the Donbass as a paid guest of Russian government, and I was just pumping out propaganda. What do you think would happen to me? Like, Graham Phillips kind of did that, and he lost his citizenship. You'd be arrested by counter-terror police. Like,
but isn't the difference there is that Russia isn't an ally, whereas Israel is meant to be an ally?
Well, correct, but you're still pushing propaganda for a foreign government in a war, and I'm just against that. Like, people say I'm a Russian shill. I'm actually not. I'm quite critical of a lot of Putin's stuff in Russia, and I value the ability that I am able to critique who I want to and how I want to. If you go to Israel on a paid trip, you're not asking any questions. You're just a propagandist. It's crazy.
He did. I'm sure you've seen the clip when he said the British can go to hell. The person he was speaking to, he looked extremely awkward during it. It was.
He did.
It was a cringe moment, wasn't it?
It was. And Robinson's trip was a disaster because he was humiliated by him. He was humiliated by the two women, and then the Speaker of the Parliament who slapped him, and when he dared try and touch the book. It's, as I say, you're not going there and dealing with these people on an equal footing. You are there as their employee, and you have to perform for them. It's not a fair deal. And as I say, I think a lot of even Tommy supporters were looking at it and they're like, what's he doing over there? Because again, the thing that they're trying to do is say, well, Israel's on the front line against radical Islam. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, why did they celebrate the fall of President Assad? It's just lies, and people need to. I think more and more people are seeing through it now. It's the early 2000s, George Bush propaganda is coming to an end. It's over soon.
it does make you think, if there's the stuff they're releasing, what's the stuff that they didn't release in those clips as well?
Yeah,
Obviously,
as I say, I am against anybody going and being paid for by a foreign country to push propaganda. I just think that's unethical. There should be some way that you should have to register as a foreign agent or some form of foreign interest. But the problem is, that's our entire political class. They're bought or paid for by someone. And as you say, the hypocrisy comes from, well, it's fine when it's their ally. And I actually say this the same about America. I'm sick as well of the amount of people in Britain who are paid for by American interests. And we are in many ways a vassal state of America. And I'm sick of it because for 200-300 years, we were a unique nation in this world and we had our own place, and we need to get back to sovereignty and individual nations plotting their own courses in the world.
I think as well, with certain family members and friends, I think one of the big issues on the Palestinian side is that they have their charter, which says they want, this YouTube, obviously, they want to genocide a certain group, which is obviously...
Do they really say that though? I mean, do they really want to do that?
I've seen that, yeah.
But I don't know if I agree with that. I think the argument would be that, you know, the you had the British Mandate of Palestine where they kind of lived together. I mean, as I say, I'm not. If Israel didn't have the support of America, Britain, the European Union, they wouldn't survive because they're subsidy junkies. They are the biggest single recipient of US foreign aid in history. They're subsidy junkies. All these settlers living in the West Bank are all living on benefits. As I said, it's a benefit state. And I don't know why we're propping it up. We have no strategic interest there at all. The only reason we do it is because we have a very powerful lobby that is involved in it. So, you say that about like the genocide, but then, I mean, look at Sudan, look at Darfur, look at all these places. It's really not anything to do with us. The only reason it's anything to do with us is because we have a very powerful Jewish lobby, but we also have a very vocal and millions of Muslims in this country. Therefore, it becomes an issue for us. As I said, I support the Palestinian people. I think they have a right to try and take their country back. But I mean, I wouldn't give them money. I wouldn't,
Sure.
do fundraisers for them or anything like that. I would offer them support. And that's just my analysis of it. And we should, and it's the same with the Ukraine conflict. You know, as I said, Ukraine had a right to defend themselves when the Russians went in. They felt that was the right thing to do. Should we have been giving them billions? Should we have been sending them weapons? Should we be doing all these things? No, of course we shouldn't. It's nothing to do with us. And again, if you really look back in history, being brutal about it, World War I and World War II were really nothing to do with us either. I mean, we were immune from what went on there, yet the ruling classes of this country have involved us in wars that have bankrupted us and nothing to do with us. And it's always been the case. And that's why you could call me an isolationist, fine. I think we need to be more isolationist.
Just going back to that, I know you've got to run, David, just going back to the previous comment before we finish, it's not to say that there aren't big violent occasions and genocidal stuff going on in Sudan, Nigeria, etc. But when it's put on black and white paper about your intentions, all I'm saying is it doesn't help their cause.
Well, as I say, I think the Middle East, these people do not subscribe to our values. These people, all of them, Israelis, Palestinians, Arabs, it is, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That is the way they behave. They do not have our values. Europeans do not think the same way as people in Arab countries do, or Middle Eastern countries. And that's why, as I said, we shouldn't get involved in any of them at all. They're nothing to do with us. The Iraq war was nothing to do with us. Shouldn't have been involved. Afghanistan, none of them. What have we gained? We've gained nothing. Absolutely nothing from any of these foreign interventions. And as you said about, the moral aspect of it, but as I said, there's plenty of situations where bad things have happened and we've not get involved. So it's never done from a moral perspective. it is done from a position of coercion. And as I said, we need to start just putting Britain first. Likewise, America needs to put America first. Every country has to put themselves first and reclaim their individual sovereignty.
Thank you, David. Obviously, we've gone past the 6:50 mark, and I know you need to head off, so we'll wrap it up there. And thank you very much for being here tonight. The viewing figures for a channel like mine are brilliant at this point, so thank you very much for bringing your audience over.
My pleasure.
As I say, very, very grateful for your time. Where can people find you that aren't aware of you on my channel?
Well, first of all, Dan, can I say thanks to you for having me on? Sometimes people don't interview me, so it's pleasant to be. I don't know why, because I'm actually a really nice guy. They can get me on X, they can get us on Telegram, and we broadcast on DLive and Rumble. And as I say, like, yes, I can be quite combative and everything, but fundamentally, I do believe in dialogue. I do believe in the willingness to debate. And if you look at modern discourse, so many people just hide behind an X account. You know, because it's easy to just tweet out garbage all day long, but to actually be able to debate, to analyze and discuss, these are skills that we don't have. So thank you very much for having me on, and I wish you well with your channel.
Thanks, David. And everyone in the audience watching this or watching it on replay, give us a subscribe if you've enjoyed this night. Many thanks, all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.